according to the people I know who not only found Gilgamesh's tomb, but also his DNA. Now remember, he's Nimrod. Remember, he goes into hell through a portal, if you will, in the very area of the, of Iraq. The people that I knew that were excavating that, different from the people that contacted you and sent you those photos, they basically talked about a tunnel system, and there was a brief mention on it during the time they were hunting for Saddam Hussein, but there's a whole different story there, and the artifacts, that there are artifacts that, collectors like, and then there's the ones the military want. The military want anything that is a weapon system, a power source, or a genetic, if you will, cache of DNA that they don't already possess. So when you and I started talking, Tom Horn, about all of the different cloning that's already being done, human cloning, we talked about that'll never happen. Dolly the sheep is a far away and a far call from human beings. And then the Chinese just announced, hey, we're going to clone a human army. My position is it's been done. Dr. Mengele, who never, basically quit his research, and those obviously in the Antarctic calling his shots and paying for his what would you call it, research. I mean, he had twinning and cloning down by the late 50s. That's hard for people to imagine, but see, here's what's fascinating. Video games are taking all this stuff on. Even Steven Spielberg's Big Friendly Giant, okay? He has a dream sequence where the real giants are eating, and obviously the young girl is saved by a big friendly giant, who kind of looks like, he's not the handsomest of guys, but he looks kind of dorky. Well, why is this coming out right now? I'll tell you why. Again, they're going to say these giants are good. They're going to be just like the giants in the Twilight Zone to serve man. And for the record, ladies and gentlemen, go look on whatever YouTube and just search for Twilight Zone to serve man, and you're going to find out that the concept of aliens being good and bringing to mankind the technology in which we save ourselves, is been spelled out. And what we need to do is take the different science fiction shows and just show the theme and show the revelation of what is in the contemporary newspapers and magazines and what's being proposed at that time. Most people don't know this. Dr. Werner von Braun was one of Walt Disney's head, the guy that basically he relied on. There's a word, I can't think of it right now. Research assistant, something like that. Tom Horn, give the bottom line on your final book on the Vatican and the Islamic Antichrist, and we've already laid out the case. Look, they're going to join together. It's going to cause a war. You talked about blood on the altar. You were very kind to let me write the introduction to it. But the point being is give the bottom line and then tell people, because I want just you to take your liberty and tell people why this is so critical, why it's the last one of the series, because quite candidly, everything that you've written about, years before is now in motion, now in play, and what is the most startling thing? I don't know if you didn't want to deal with it, but please kind of give at least the hints that you absolutely were blown away with, because God took you to heaven when you were dead, and Nita was praying for you and gave you revelation, sealed up stuff. You asked him, Lord, I want to remember. The Lord said, you're not going to remember. But as times get darker, those things that God implants in people's spirit that are basically timed release are coming forth. So you share that. What is the most important thing that you came away with this book? You want people to get this book. And by the way, tell how they can get it too, Tom. Do that now, because I want it now.
Well, I will say this. It's the biggest revelation of all of them. It's much bigger than all of the other three combined. The revelations in it and the predictions in it. And I do go out on a limb in the same way that I went out on a limb in predicting the resignation of Pope Benedict 1 year in advance. I'm on both television and also in our book as suggesting that's going to happen, and it did. This time around, the predictions are much more significant. And they do, by the way, have something to do with the fact that many years ago, I died. I woke up in heaven. And I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I've written a little bit about it online in the series. If people want to go to skywatchtv.com, look in the left column, pull down the screen, look in the left column, they'll see the series there. And they'll read a little bit about me talking about that. For the longest time, I wouldn't talk about it at all. They'll find out why I wouldn't talk about it, too, if they read that article. It was really Sid Roth that kind of drew me out to talk about that, and so I did. Then it turned out to be amazing that much of what had happened to me had also happened to you, Steve. And I did not know that because we had never talked about it. But in this final book, I make two major predictions. And I make them with the same level of confidence that I made when I predicted that Pope Benedict was going to step down in April of 2012, which he did. Same level of confidence. But this is much bigger. And we don't have time tonight to go into all this or all of the details that are in the book, The Final Roman Emperor. Oh, you mentioned for me to tell people how they can get it. Here's what I want to say. Look, the final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's last crusade. This is going to be of such scope and impact that it is going to raise the international community. There will be an outcry sufficient for the Vatican to play its first card, which, as you read the book, you'll learn has already been primed by subtle references to what's called just war theory in the lead-up to this predicted event. When this weapon of mass destruction is used by ISIS, the Roman Pope is going to call for the revitalization of the Christian rules for just war. These are very important terms I'm using here. A coalition army, similar to the 2003 invasion of Iraq, is going to be formed to seriously engage the Islamic radicals, not like what you've seen so far, but literally to wipe them out. Geopolitics aside, the jihadists are going to see the Vatican's sanction of war as a new final religious crusade that plays into the Cumae Sibyl's prophecy. They're going to see it as the actual fulfillment of their 1,300-year-old hadith, which allegedly quotes the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, but actually plagiarized from the prophecies of the Cumae Sibyl concerning the last days caliphate that goes up against the armies of Rome to initiate Malachim, which is equivalent to Armageddon in Christian teaching. This is a battle that ISIS believes they're ultimately going to win. And that war, they believe, is going to provoke the coming of Mahdi. That's the reason that's part of our title. Chris Putnam and I don't believe that the Antichrist is going to be a Muslim necessarily, but Islam is connected to a plagiarism of the Cumae Sibyl's prophecy, in which they took what the Catholics call the final Roman Emperor, and they call it the Mahdi. So you're going to find out about that. And this is something that nobody anywhere has ever analyzed before, and you are going to be blown away by it. So they believe that the Mahdi is going to come. Then the Al-Masih al-Dajjal, or just call him the Dajjal, the Antichrist, is going to appear. Isa, who is Jesus, they believe is going to come and spear the Antichrist and fight on behalf of the Muslim army. So that's what they believe is going to happen. It's my belief that Pope Francis, or whatever, by the way, whatever pontiff is sitting on St. Peter's throne at the Vatican at the time. Why would I say that? Because there is some other strange prophetic possibilities going on here in which Pope Francis may not have been canonically elected. And if he wasn't, then he's a placeholder pope. He's actually standing in the place of the true final Pope number 112. If that sounds confusing, get the book and read it. You won't be confused anymore. At least you'll understand where the mystics in Rome are coming from. But the bottom line is the current Pope is going to initiate a call for the Christian rules for just war. And he's going to connect ISIS terrorism with the end of the world.